Hello. So today we are going to discuss the topic pleiotropism. Um, and this is a very important concept in genetics. While we go through Gregor Mendel's work on the pea plant, there are several observations while he was studying inheritance in the pea plants. And one of the very striking observations was the color of the flower, the color of the seed coat or the seed as well, and the pigmentation in the axil. So we are going to discuss that in pleiotropism, like how one single gene is responsible for all these three different traits. But before that, let us know what is the definition of pleiotropism. In genetics, pleiotropy is defined as the expression of multiple traits by a single gene. So here one gene is responsible for three or more characters. So one gene is not only responsible for one character but for more than one characters. We have already studied that how one gene is responsible for the formation of a protein, and when that protein is expressed, the functional integrity of that protein, the conformation of that protein, is responsible for the expression of that particular character. So, pleiotropy is basically one gene, one protein, but multiple traits. So, here there are some conditions which are seen in humans, other organisms. So pleiotropy was first, say, observed by Mendel in the pea plant. So it is not that it only exists in the plants, but it also exists in different organisms. And there are certain conditions like sickle cell anemia, Marfan syndrome, phenylketonuria, cystic fibrosis. All of these are studied and are still a part of research. Sickle cell anemia is very well known because the size of the RBCs change. They look like a sickle. Then it causes pain because of the change in the shape of the RBCs, and it is very difficult for the RBCs now to pass through the capillaries and the blood vessels, and it could then lead to less supply of blood to the organs and cause organ damage. There is Marfan syndrome, which is also characterized or classified as a connective tissue related syndrome. It affects height, it affects vision, and it also affects the heart function. So, wherever basically connective tissues are, height, because bones are connective tissues, heart function, so cardiac muscles, they are all connective tissues, vision, because the lens in the eyes, all of them get affected. The third condition is phenylketonuria, and that causes, what are the symptoms there is eczema, pale light skin condition, and mental retardedness. So, that we are going to study in a little bit of a detail in the further slides. Cystic fibrosis again is a condition that affects multiple organs. So, it is very clear that pleiotropy exists in the living cells, and probably there is a it is a valuable information. Why? Because you can relate pleiotropy to evolution, how different genes and how different gene families have evolved. I think pleiotropy gives a good explanation or forms a very perfect base for that, for the evolutionary studies of genes. And pleiotropy also reflects to the fact that most proteins have multiple roles in different cell types. So, different tissues will require, say, different proteins for function, and pleiotropy definitely helps in understanding that. Now, when Mendel was observing the pea plant, he had a very striking observation is that colored flower was always associated with colored seed coat and colored leaf axil. So this is the axil, which is a connecting point between the leaf and the stem. So if the flower was colored, the seed coat had to be colored, and pigmentation was seen at the leaf axil. But if the flower was colorless, or if there's nothing like colorless, sorry, but if the flower was white, then the seed coat was not of color, there was no pigmentation there. and there was no pigmentation at the axial as well. So which also kind of indicates that Mendel Mendel's pea plants, also because he carried out so many experiments on pea plants, they were also categorized as Mendel's pea plants. They are still known as Mendel's pea plants. Seed coat color was always associated with specific flower and axial color slash pigmentation. So now it is very clear that suppose if there's one gene that is, say, denoted as A, and now this gene A is responsible for three traits: flower color, seed color, and axial color. The word pleiotropy is derived from a Greek word. If you split the word, it is pleo and tropy. So pleios means many and tropic means affecting. So genes that affect multiple apparently unrelated phenotypes are called as pleiotropic genes. What does it mean? Like if you're looking at, say, a single gene which is responsible for colored flower, colored seed coat, and pigmented axil. All of these traits phenotypically are different, they are unrelated. But yet, if the gene A gets affected, all these three unrelated genes, all these three unrelated phenotypes, sorry, also will get affected. Okay, so now in this case, you're seeing two chromosomes here. Suppose this is one with one single gene, and in the second one, you see three separate genes. So when an offspring receives that from the parent, it could be a single gene, and that single gene, if it is a pleiotropic gene, then it will be responsible for three different characters, three different traits, or more than that. But if in the case of the second gene, second chromosome, since the distance between the three genes is not very much, such genes are also called as linked genes, related genes. So there's never only one gene being transferred. For example, here, if you look at the color code, not only the blue gene will have a separate, passage into the offspring, but along with the blue, the yellow will also tag along, the red will also tag along. So all the three will be transferred to the offspring. So linked genes have a very different concept. Pleiotropic gene have a different concept here. So we have understood that there is a gene, suppose we denote it as A, and that one gene will be responsible for trait 1, trait 2, trait 3. In this case, we are talking about flower color, seed color, and axial pigmentation. A condition which is termed as phenylketonuria in humans has been studied in great details. So, to understand a little more about it, there is phenylalanine. We all know that we require amino acids for the synthesis of proteins in our body. These amino acids we do not produce. Human body is unable and capable of producing amino acids largely. We depend upon food sources, and the protein in the food sources is then broken down into individual amino acids by the body's metabolism, digestion process, and all the metabolic processes. So, phenylalanine is one of the amino acids. Now, this phenylalanine is broken down to tyrosine or converted to tyrosine in presence of phenylalanine hydroxylase. What is the role of tyrosine and why is it required? Because tyrosine is responsible for T3, T4, TSH synthesis, that is the thyroid regulation, and thyroid is extremely important for a proper metabolic regulation in the body. So, the proper growth of the body is all dependent upon how a person's hormonal levels T3, T4, TSH are. Then the dopamine secretion, the feeling of happiness, the feeling of fullness, peace, all of that, and melanin. So, melanin is again related to pigmentation. So, it is extremely important for the phenylalanine to be broken down to tyrosine in presence of phenylalanine hydroxylase. What happens if this is absent? What happens if this gene, which is responsible for this particular enzyme, if there is a defect, if it is a mutated gene, it may result into unsuccessful conversion of phenylalanine to tyrosine. So, which also means that there would be unutilized phenylalanine in the body, which would start accumulating, and anything in excess which is accumulated in the body is not good. It will definitely be given out by the body in the urine. Okay, so in such cases, when phenylalanine starts accumulating in excess, there's a certain limit to the body also, that how much it can pump out. And because of the accumulation, mental retardation, eczema, and then pale light skin in people is also observed, because we have seen that how melanin is synthesized depending upon the tyrosine concentration. Now, if tyrosine is not there, obviously melanin will also not be produced. So it means that this particular gene here is extremely important, and this is your pleiotropic gene here, because it is responsible, as it is controlling three different traits, or multiple traits, you can say, not three different traits but multiple traits. So any genetic change that alters gene expression, or the function, can potentially have a wide ranging effect in a variety of tissues. So it's not that thyroid is just one part. Dopamine definitely is not produced in the thyroid. So all different parts or all different tissues will benefit from tyrosine. Okay, so a genetic change that alters gene expression or function can potentially have wide ranging effects in a variety of tissues. So pleiotropic genes are important. The study is important because it forms a foundation. It gives you valuable information regarding the evolution of different genes and gene families. And that's all about phenylketonuria. If you have any questions, you can post them. Thank you very much.